I cried writing the script. I cried preparing the film, making the film, shooting the film. I cried in the edit, and I still cry sometimes in the movie.
Hi all, it's Sailesh from AsianCultureVulture.com. Be talking to the British writer-director Sally El Hosaini about her new film called The Swimmers. It had its world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival and has been shown at many film festivals around the world. It's a great film. It's about two sisters coming out of war-torn Syria and one of them becoming an Olympic swimmer. Let's go and find out more. How much of the story did you know before you began actually working on it?
So I'd heard about Yusra. She was in the news around the time that she was at the Rio Olympics. So I knew a little bit about her story, not a huge amount, but I didn't actually know about Sarah until Working Title contacted me with a screenplay and they were looking for a director. And so I read the script and realized this wasn't just a story about one hero, but two, the celebrated one in Yusra, but also an unsung hero in Sarah. And I just really related to who Yusra and Sarah were as young, liberal, modern Arab women. They reminded me of me and my friends growing up in Cairo. They're the kinds of young women you don't normally see on screen. I'm a middle child, so in that sense, I can relate to that sibling relationship. My first film was about brothers.
People know who I am. That's how it starts, bro.
So this is my second film about sisters.
Yeah.
I have to leave the sibling relationship now and try something else, huh?
It's a serious story, but there's a lot of fun within it, and I think it has a really, you seem to find the tone really well.
You know, I was mindful of that, and tonally I really wanted to show Yusra and Sarah as they were. The way that they got through these difficult times was with humour, and you know how I've gotten through the toughest times in my life is with humour, and I think it's about what makes us human beings.
For everyone who died trying to find a new life.
And it's about the human spirit, and that's how we all go through these things.
What was the most challenging thing about putting the script together?
I think it was balancing the different stories. At the forefront, we knew we wanted the sister story, to this journey from competitive girls who are competing with each other to true sisterhood at the end of the movie, the way that their relationship spirals when one's strong, the other's weak, how they support each other, how they fight, the complexity in that relationship. That was always the main thrust of the story. They go on a physical journey, but it's the emotional journey the sisters go on that's what's actually driving the film. And then we were mindful to show the adopted family of refugees, to honor the refugee story. Yusra and Sarah's story is unique and inspirational, but it is a unique story. And we also wanted to honor the 99% that don't have that outcome, who, like Nizar, their cousin in the film. So we actually fictionalized the character of Nizar, for example, because they did travel with two young cousins who were around Nizar's age. Right. That was truthful. But by fictionalizing him, we were able to leave him in limbo, show that he maybe was thinking about going back home, show certain aspects where he could become an everyman in a certain way, and really reflect the 99% experience, and also bring a lot of much needed humor to the film.
What you both did in the scene.
She got embarrassed.
We don't really see enough of these kind of women in the West because we have it can be a very narrow kind of lens through we're looking through, and you seem to have opened it up a lot more.
I wanted to subvert some of the stereotypes I've seen cinematically about the Middle East and about Arab women and about refugees. So the whole film was a subversion for me. We went to Cairo and Marrakesh film festivals, and it was the first Arab audiences we were sharing the film with, and everybody broke out into spontaneous cheers and applause and tears when she won the race. And I realized in that moment how starved that audience is for a young Arab girl to win in a movie. And it's what can sometimes be seen as perhaps the sports movie or the less interesting bit by a Western audience is actually the most necessary and revolutionary bit for an Arab audience. And it's the part that is the most moving for them. To see a character like that succeed, and for her not to be left in tears, in desperation, in the movie, at the end of the movie, it's so important. In terms of how we depicted Syria, you can sometimes from the news images think that it's all like the bombed out buildings of Homs or Aleppo that you see and that do exist. But the situation in Damascus was different. People were coexisting with war. They were living with war. You know, as the sisters explained it to me, for the first year you stayed hidden in your flat, and then when they realized the bombs could hit you if you're hiding in your flat, if you're out with your friends, you start to realize life must go on and you must continue to live through this. And they lived 4 years of war. Trying to train in a swimming pool that was continually being bombed. That wasn't just a one-off situation. That was something that happened regularly. So this coexistence, and ultimately trying to be teenagers, going out clubbing, meeting their friends. You know, Yusra tells me of a story when she was on the way to meet her friends and a mortar landed and it was really chaotic and she hid behind a wall and it was really crazy. And then she was like, oh, I should go home. And then she's like, no, the mortar just landed right next to me. What are the chances statistically it's going to hit me tonight? I'm going to go meet my friends.
The conflict in Syria has escalated out of control.
The ambition was ultimately to make this as far away from the news images as we could get, because you can look at the news images and we all have a bit of sympathy fatigue. You feel really terrible and you sympathize. But when you sympathize with something you're seeing, there's a distance that's created between you and that thing you are looking at. And with the film, my ambition was to allow the audience to walk in their shoes and to really empathize. And it was that difference between sympathy and empathy that I think was the distinction I was trying to make in the film.
The actors who play Yusra and Sarah, how did that come about? Because they're beautifully cast and they're absolutely brilliant in the film.
They are truly brilliant. And Manalisa is an established Lebanese actress, and I saw some independent Lebanese films that she was in, and that's how I became aware of her. And interestingly, she was the first person I thought of when I first read the script. I was looking for native Arabic-speaking actors, so that was because of the bilingual nature of the film, and I wanted that part to be completely authentic. And so we began looking at the Levant, and then that was when Manal came into audition and we talked about sisterhood. And then I asked her about her little sister and the subject came up and she said, no, she's not an actress. She's actually studying for a master's in literature. Natalie read Yusra's book and said, yes, I'll come and screen test. And when I saw the two of them together, they really reminded me of the Mardini sisters and their dynamic, their energy and just who they were. And so it was a no-brainer, really. They're wonderful in the film.
Was it important for you to have a strong relationship with the actual Yusra and Sarah? Was that important to you?
Very important. They were involved in the project before I was. So when I came on board, they were already involved and on board. And one of the first things I did was go out to Berlin and meet them and to get to know them. And we were on WhatsApp. So I was constantly asking them questions. The music from the movie, some of the Sia songs, for example, came directly from Yusra's playlist. So they were part and parcel. In fact, Yusra doubled for herself in the movie.
Wow.
So some of the swimming doubling in the movie was done by Yusra. We filmed everything for real except for the nighttime crossing, which was done in a water tank in Belgium. It was too dangerous to put people in the sea, but all the daytime crossing was done for real in the Aegean Sea, where when we were wrecking it, we actually saw boats crossing and saw the Coast Guard ships chasing them and really out in open water.
What's been the high point of you having, released the film in different festivals and have a kind of release experience now?
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked this question a couple of times and it's a really hard one to answer because there've been so many. A big one for me is when we first shared the film with Yusra and Sarah for the first time. And we went to Berlin, myself, Eric, the producer, and Ian, our editor. And we were so nervous to finally share the film with them. I knew they were going to like it, but also there's always that doubt, isn't there? And so we sat in the back row and they sat in the middle of the cinema with the real Sven. Ready? And the three of them watched the film. And within the first few scenes, they were laughing, they were crying. They kept turning around and going, I love this song. They were dancing in their seats. And then when the film ended, Sarah climbed over the backs of the seats and she gave me a huge hug and said, thank you. You reminded me how much I love my sister. And Yusra was like, thank you, especially for the nightclub scene when we're dancing to Titanium and the bombs are dropping, because that's what it really felt like. And I felt like you really captured what it was like to live that.
There are so few British women directors, and obviously being a person of colour and all that. Has that been really challenging in terms of going from your first film, which was very successful, and then doing it in a way which is consistent with your own ideals and beliefs? I mean, the language thing is interesting.
Yeah, when I came to the project, the film was in English, and I was the one who really fought for it to be a bilingual film and to have the Arabic in the film.
Well, it really works, and I think again, it's a beautiful way of making the story accessible for everybody. It had a ring of authenticity. How did you divide it up into what was Arabic and sometimes English?
It's very interesting, that question, because that was something that was reached not just by me, but also with the actors. That was something that we reached. It's an intuitive thing at times. So Yusra and Sarah were bilingual. They spoke English at home sometimes, especially in front of their parents. They didn't want them to hear it. With their friends, they spoke English, which you saw in the Syrian section. But predominantly, we stuck to the Arabic when talking to family and home and the parents. But then there were times on the road where they would speak Arabic with each other if they had a fight or if they were talking about something very emotional. But in reality, Yusra and Sarah flipped to English quite quickly on that journey because they were around a group of refugees for whom the spoken language was English.
I believe you can do it.
They were from Afghanistan, Somalia, different places. And dealing with the people in the countries they were in, English became the language of choice for refugees.
We're forming an Olympic refugee team for Rio. We have a lot of work to do.
And when they got to Germany, they didn't speak German. So they spoke English to the Germans. And then Yusra and Sarah began to speak English with each other in Germany because it began to be a little bit painful to sometimes speak Arabic because that was the language of home and they missed home and it would make them feel sad. So in that sense, English became something they spoke more of.
Swim for all of us.
Do you think the environment has improved so much now that a woman like yourself coming into the industry can make the kind of films you want to?
I think that everything a filmmaker does is political in terms of what they put in the frame or don't put in the frame, in terms of whose story it is and who's telling it, but also in terms of what stories get financed and what stories have permission to be made. And that's a constant struggle, not just for me. You know, I was never aware of my gender or even my background until I started to make films, until I made my first film and I was asked suddenly what it was like to be a female filmmaker. I mean, I barely thought of myself as a filmmaker at that point, let alone a female one. And so it's quite interesting that these are things that, as I progressed with my career, have become more. But they were certainly something unconscious. And my first film was about brothers. I was asked as a female director why I was making a film about men and masculinity. And it was something I had never pondered when I wrote the script. In that regard, I think it's a struggle for all filmmakers and the responsibility of all filmmakers for what they put out in the world.
I have to just ask you about this project with James Krishna Floyd, because obviously he's in the movie.
I've co-directed a film with James Krishna Floyd called Unicorns that we're currently editing. And he wrote it. And it's about the South Asian subculture, and it's a beautiful film. I'm very excited about it, and
we're very excited about it too.
Hopefully, it will be coming to you soon.
Yeah, great. All right, lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We have a home. Swimming is home.